The town was quiet under the early morning sun. Dust rose gently from the streets as the wind moved through the empty lanes. The few shops along the main street had their doors open, and the smell of bread from the bakery floated across the square. People were starting their day, moving slowly and carefully, aware of the heat that would come later in the day. A horse's hooves echoed in the distance, steady and deliberate, drawing the attention of anyone nearby. It was not the usual sound of a passing traveler or a local merchant. It carried weight and purpose from.
Ow!
Around the corner rode a man on a dark horse. His clothing was simple, but sturdy, made for travel and long days in the sun. His face was strong and weathered, with lines that spoke of many years spent on the road. His eyes were sharp and observant, scanning everything around him, taking in the town, the people, and the quiet tension that lay beneath the ordinary appearance. He carried nothing more than what was necessary, a small bag on his saddle and a rolled blanket behind him. There was no hurry in his movements, but a certain confidence that made him impossible to ignore as he approached the center of the town. People paused in their routines. A man sweeping the steps of his shop stopped to watch, his broom held midair. A woman carrying a basket of vegetables slowed her pace, glancing curiously. Even the children who played near the fountain stopped, sensing that something unusual had arrived. The stranger did not seem to notice the attention. He kept his eyes forward, guiding his horse with quiet authority. His gaze eventually landed on the building at the far end of the street. A small house with wooden shutters and a neatly kept front porch. He slowed his horse as if he had found what he was looking for inside the house. A woman was attending to her morning chores. She moved quickly and efficiently, her hands steady as she arranged dishes and swept the floor. She was strong and capable, used to handling every task that came her way. Her face showed the kind of quiet determination that came from years of taking care of herself and her family. She had heard about the stranger who had come into town, but paid little attention, assuming he was just another traveler passing through. That was, until she saw him approaching her doorstep. He dismounted with ease, the leather of his boots making soft noises against the wooden planks of the porch. He did not immediately speak, simply stood there for a moment, letting his presence be felt. There was something about him that made the air feel heavier, more focused. The woman set down her broom and looked directly at him, her curiosity growing despite a small warning in her mind to be cautious. He looked back, his eyes meeting hers with a steady intensity that was difficult to ignore. He finally spoke, his voice calm and measured, asking about someone who owed a debt to his employer. It was not a harsh demand or a threat, but a clear and direct statement of purpose. The woman felt a mixture of surprise and unease. She had been expecting trouble in some form, but not this calm and unusual approach. She replied honestly, explaining what she knew about the person he was seeking. Her words were careful, respectful, and measured. She did not want to cause problems, yet she did not want to hide the truth. The stranger listened, nodding slightly as he absorbed every detail. His expression remained unreadable, but there was a subtle hint of approval in the way he acknowledged her honesty. The conversation continued. Simple and straightforward at first, but soon small hints of curiosity and interest began to surface. They asked each other questions not directly related to the debt, casual questions about the town, the weather, and life in general. The stranger was careful not to reveal too much about himself, keeping the details of his mission private. Yet the way he spoke, with patience and understanding, made it difficult for the woman to remain guarded entirely. She found herself noticing the little things, the way he adjusted his posture, the way his eyes seemed to notice everything around them, and even the quiet way he smiled at moments she did not expect. The townspeople watched from a distance, whispering among themselves about the stranger who had appeared. Some were wary, some curious, but all were captivated in some way by his arrival. The atmosphere of the town began to change slightly, a subtle shift caused by the presence of this single man. He moved through the streets with purpose but without urgency, stopping only when necessary and speaking only when spoken to. His mannerisms showed a life spent traveling, observing, and learning about people without needing to interfere unless it was important for the woman. The day began with the usual routine but was quickly altered by the stranger's presence. She continued her tasks, but found her thoughts wandering, thinking about the man who had arrived quietly, almost unnoticed, yet managed to command attention simply by being himself. She wondered about his life, why he had come, and what he had experienced to reach this point. At the same time, there was a small sense of caution, a reminder to herself that strangers could bring both trouble and opportunity as the hours passed. The stranger moved carefully through the town, gathering information and making quiet inquiries. He was precise, efficient, and never seemed to lose focus. At times he returned to the woman's home, seeking clarification or additional details. Each visit was brief but meaningful, leaving an impression that lingered long after he departed. Their interactions, though centered around the debt, began to carry an undercurrent of something deeper, a connection that neither of them fully understood yet could not ignore. The day wore on, and the sun climbed higher, casting sharp shadows across the streets. The town's rhythm continued, but with an added sense of anticipation. People moved about with a little more awareness, glancing occasionally at the stranger who had arrived and remained, quietly observing and interacting. Children still played, shopkeepers still tended to their goods, but the presence of the man on horseback had changed the energy in subtle ways. There was a feeling that something important was unfolding. Even if no one could predict exactly what it would by late afternoon, the stranger had gathered all the information he needed. He returned to the woman's home one final time that day, asking a few remaining questions and confirming details. This time, there was a longer pause, a moment where neither spoke immediately, both sensing the unusual tension and curiosity between them. It was not attraction in the conventional sense yet, but a recognition of each other's presence, abilities, and character. The woman felt a strange comfort in his calm and focused manner, while the stranger seemed to acknowledge her strength and intelligence without needing to say, "Itaz," he prepared to leave. The stranger offered a nod of respect. There was no rush, no drama, simply a quiet acknowledgement of what had been shared. The woman watched as he mounted his horse, his movements deliberate and precise. He rode away slowly, giving her time to absorb the encounter. She felt a mixture of relief and anticipation, wondering if she would see him again, or if this was a fleeting moment that would fade into memory. The townspeople resumed their routines, but whispers and glances followed him as he disappeared down the road that night. The woman reflected on the day's events. She thought about the stranger, his calm demeanor, and the way he seemed to understand her without needing many words. There was a curiosity that lingered, questions she wanted to ask, stories she wanted to hear, and a subtle hope that the encounter might continue. The town was quiet once more, but the air carried the sense that something new had entered their lives, something that might change them in ways no one could yet predict. The stranger rode on through the evening, thinking about the town, the woman, and the small but meaningful interactions that had occurred. He kept his purpose in mind, but could not ignore the impression the woman had made on him. She was strong, intelligent, and capable, with a presence that demanded respect. At the same time, there was warmth and kindness in her demeanor that drew him in quietly, almost against his will. He rode on, knowing that his journey had just begun, and that the connection formed in those brief hours might be more important than the task he had come to complete. The next morning began with the same quiet routine as the day before. The sun rose slowly over the town, painting the streets in shades of gold and orange. The air was still cool, carrying the smell of earth and dust from the night. The woman moved through her chores with practiced hands, sweeping the porch, arranging the kitchen, and tending to the small garden. Her mind, however, kept drifting back to the stranger. She wondered what had brought him to their town and why his presence felt so different from anyone else she had met. There was a part of her that wanted to dismiss the curiosity, yet it remained stubbornly alive within her meanwhile. The stranger had returned to the outskirts of the town, taking a seat under a tree and observing the streets from a distance. He had thought carefully about the information he gathered the previous day and was planning his next move. Yet, despite the focus on his task, he could not shake the image of the woman from his thoughts. There was something in her strength and calmness that was unexpected, something that drew him to her beyond the simple reason he had come. He knew he had to remain focused, yet he could not ignore the subtle connection that had begun to form. By mid-morning, he returned to the town, walking slowly through the streets instead of riding. The townspeople noticed his presence once again, curious whispers passing among them. He moved deliberately, observing the shops, the people, and the rhythm of daily life. He arrived at the woman's home and paused at the gate, taking a moment to collect his thoughts. When she saw him, she felt a mix of caution and curiosity. She had been expecting him, but did not know what to say or do. He smiled faintly, a gesture that was small but genuine, and greeted her with a calm and respectful tone. They began to talk. Initially about the debtor and the task he had been sent to complete, she answered his questions patiently, offering details that he had not yet discovered. The conversation was tense at times, with moments of disagreement, yet it remained polite and measured. As they spoke, they began to notice things about each other beyond the surface. She observed his careful attention to every word, the way he seemed to weigh each piece of information. He noticed her resilience, the quiet way she managed her responsibilities, and the way she spoke with honesty and conviction. As the hours passed, the discussion shifted slightly. They began to share small personal stories, not in full detail, but enough to give glimpses of their lives. She mentioned how the town had changed over the years, the struggles she had faced managing the household and the people she had helped along the way. He shared brief anecdotes about his travels, about towns and people he had encountered, careful not to reveal too much. There was a subtle exchange of respect and understanding, recognition that each had experienced hardship and had learned lessons from it during the afternoon. An unexpected problem arose. The debtor had not responded as anticipated, and there were signs of tension in the town. Some townspeople began to murmur, concerned about the consequences if the matter escalated. The stranger remained calm, analyzing the situation carefully. He suggested a cautious approach, and together they devised a plan to handle the problem without causing unnecessary conflict. The woman followed his guidance, impressed by his strategic thinking and the ease with which he managed delicate situations in the process. They began to spend more time together outside of the immediate task. They walked through the town, observing the market, the shops, and the people who lived there. The woman pointed out details about the town, its history, and its quirks. While he listened attentively, occasionally asking questions, their conversations flowed naturally, with laughter and small moments of shared amusement breaking the tension of the day. The bond between them strengthened, built on mutual respect and the small joys of discovering someone new evening. They found themselves sitting on a bench outside her home, the sky painted in deep shades of orange and purple. The town had quieted, and the air carried a peaceful stillness. The stranger spoke softly about his observations, mentioning things he admired about her town and her approach to life. She listened, feeling a warmth she had not expected. For the first time, the task at hand seemed secondary. Overshadowed by the connection that was quietly forming between them, the night brought cooler air, and the stranger prepared to leave, though not without a sense of reluctance. They shared a brief conversation, discussing plans for the following day and the next steps in resolving the debt. Despite the professional context, there was an unspoken understanding and mutual acknowledgement of the bond that was developing. She watched as he mounted his horse, feeling an unfamiliar mix of anticipation and concern for what was to come. He rode away slowly, giving her a chance to absorb the moment, leaving a lingering presence that seemed to hang in the air even. After he disappeared from view, she spent the night reflecting on the day. Thoughts of him occupied her mind, not just because of his appearance or manner, but because of the way he had made her feel seen and understood. There was a quiet admiration growing within her, a recognition that he was not like others who had passed through the town. At the same time, there was a cautious part of her that reminded her of the practical realities of life and the importance of remaining grounded. Stranger traveled through the darkened streets outside the town. Contemplating the events of the day, he thought about the woman and her resilience, her honesty, and the subtle kindness that had emerged in their conversations. He reflected on the purpose of his visit, the importance of completing his task, and the unexpected distraction she had become. Despite the complexity of his mission, he felt a growing desire to protect the connection that had begun. to ensure that it could develop without being interrupted by the practicalities of the world around them the following day. They resumed their interactions with a careful balance between professional discussion and personal connection. They met at different points in the town, sometimes in the marketplace, other times near the river, where the quiet sound of water added a calming rhythm to their conversations. They exchanged stories, shared observations, and gradually allowed moments of vulnerability to appear. The woman spoke of her hopes for the future, her desire to see the town thrive, and the challenges she faced along the way. The stranger offered guidance, support, and subtle encouragement. Never overstepping but always present throughout the day, small gestures of trust and understanding grew. She began to rely on his advice for practical decisions, and he showed a willingness to listen and adapt. The townspeople noticed the interactions, some curious, others approving, and a few skeptical. Yet the pair remained focused on their own connection, building a foundation of mutual respect and appreciation. It was not love in the conventional sense yet, but a deepening bond rooted in honesty, care, and shared purpose. As the afternoon light faded, they faced another challenge related to the debtor. A misunderstanding threatened to escalate, and the tension in the town increased. Together, they navigated the situation with patience, strategic thinking, and calm communication. Their ability to work together in moments of stress revealed strengths in both of them that were not obvious at first glance. The woman recognized his dependability and clear judgment, while he saw her courage, intelligence, and determination in handling difficult circumstances by evening. The immediate problem had been managed, and a sense of relief settled over the town. The stranger returned to her home for one last conversation before the night. They discussed what had been achieved, the remaining steps, and the expectations for the days ahead. Their conversation flowed naturally, with moments of shared humor, thoughtful reflection, and a quiet acknowledgement of the growing connection between them. When he left that night, there was a sense of anticipation and curiosity about what the next day would bring, and both felt the subtle pull of something important developing beyond their original purpose. The woman went to bed with her mind full of thoughts about the stranger, the events of the past 2 days, and the unexpected emotions that had begun to stir. She realized that the arrival of this man had disrupted the ordinary rhythm of her life, yet in ways that were neither threatening nor unwelcome. The stranger had introduced a sense of possibility, a spark of something new that made her feel alive and curious. The stranger traveled quietly under the night sky, reflecting on the town, the woman, and the delicate balance between duty and personal connection. He understood the importance of the task he had been sent to complete. Yet he also recognized the subtle and growing significance of the relationship that had begun. There was a quiet determination to continue with care, to ensure that every action taken respected the bond forming between them, and to see what might unfold in the days to come. The first days of interaction had laid the foundation, and both were aware that the story was only beginning, with many challenges, surprises, and discoveries ahead. The morning was cool and clear, and the town began to stir slowly under the soft sunlight. Birds moved through the trees, singing quietly as people emerged from their homes and shops. The woman started her day as usual, carrying out chores and tending to small responsibilities with steady hands. Despite the routine, her thoughts were on the stranger who had come to town. There was a curiosity in her heart that could not be ignored, a quiet pull toward the man who had entered her life with a purpose, but left a deeper impression than she had anticipated. The stranger returned that morning with the same careful precision he had shown before. He walked through the streets on foot, observing the town and its people, noticing details that others overlooked. His eyes scanned the buildings, the market, and the river where children played and women washed clothes. He moved with patience and awareness, his focus sharp, yet tempered by a quiet respect for the life around him. He arrived at the woman's home and paused at the gate, taking a moment to breathe and prepare himself before entering when she saw him. There was a brief hesitation on both sides, a silent acknowledgement of the tension and curiosity that had grown between them. They greeted each other with calm voices, exchanging words about the debtor and the progress that had been made. Yet beneath the surface, the conversation carried a subtle warmth, a recognition of shared experiences and understanding. They spoke with honesty and clarity, careful to navigate both the professional and personal aspects of their interaction. As the morning passed, they walked together through the town, observing the small details of everyday life. She pointed out familiar landmarks, the history behind certain buildings, and stories about the people who had shaped the town over the years. He listened intently, asking questions with genuine interest and offering thoughtful observations that revealed his intelligence and curiosity. Their conversation flowed naturally, filled with moments of reflection, humor, and quiet admiration for each other's perspectives. During their walk, a small incident occurred. A horse had bolted in the marketplace, startling a few townspeople and sending goods tumbling to the ground. Without hesitation, the stranger stepped forward, calmly approaching the horse and guiding it back to safety. The woman assisted where she could, helping to steady the situation and reassure those nearby. The event, though brief, revealed their ability to work together under pressure. She saw his calm determination and skill, while he noticed her courage and quick thinking in unexpected circumstances. After the incident, they found a quiet spot near the river to sit and rest. The sound of flowing water provided a gentle rhythm to their conversation. They began to share more personal thoughts, speaking carefully but openly about challenges and fears they had faced. She spoke of responsibilities she had carried alone, of moments of uncertainty and struggle. He shared glimpses of his travels, the loneliness of the road, and the sense of purpose that had guided him. There was a growing trust between them, a sense that they could reveal parts of themselves without judgment or pretense. The townspeople noticed their frequent interactions, some curious, others quietly approving. The market vendors observed how naturally the pair seemed to communicate, their movements and words synchronized in subtle ways. Children watched with fascination, and older residents whispered about the connection forming between the two. Despite the attention, the woman and the stranger remained focused on each other. Navigating their growing bond with patience and care. By midday, the matter of the debtor had taken a more complicated turn. New information emerged that required careful handling. The stranger consulted with the woman, and together they devised a plan to approach the situation thoughtfully. They spoke with a sense of strategy and consideration, balancing the need for resolution with respect for the people involved. This process strengthened their connection further, as they relied on each other's judgment and insight to navigate a delicate challenge throughout the afternoon. Small moments of connection continued to appear. They shared laughter over minor mishaps, discussed dreams for the future, and observed the simple beauty of the town around them. Each conversation revealed more about their character, values, and desires. The stranger began to notice the subtle ways the woman cared for those around her, thoughtfulness in her actions, and the resilience that had allowed her to face difficulties without losing hope. She, in turn, recognized his quiet strength, integrity, and the respect he held for the lives of others. As evening approached, the town was bathed in golden light. The streets were quieter, and the air carried a sense of calm. The woman invited the stranger to sit on the porch while she prepared tea, a gesture of hospitality and shared time. They spoke softly, reflecting on the events of the day, the progress made with the debtor, and the small discoveries they had made about each other. The conversation deepened, moving beyond practical matters to thoughts about life, purpose, and the connections that defined human experience. The sun set slowly, casting long shadows across the streets and bathing the town in a warm, gentle glow. The stranger prepared to leave, but the pause before his departure was longer than usual. They exchanged words that carried unspoken meaning, a recognition of the growing bond between them. The woman felt a quiet anticipation, a sense that the stranger's presence had introduced a new possibility into her life. He, too, was aware of the subtle pull, the curiosity and care that had emerged during their time together when he rode away. There was a sense of lingering presence, as if the air itself carried the memory of their interaction. The woman watched from her porch, feeling a mixture of hope, curiosity, and a quiet wonder about what the future might hold. The town resumed its rhythm, but for her, the day had shifted in subtle but meaningful ways. She understood that this connection, though new and fragile, had the potential to grow and change the course of her life. That night, she reflected on the events, the conversations, and the small moments that had defined the day. She recognized the importance of trust, patience, and careful observation in building a connection with someone new. There was a warmth in her thoughts, a recognition of the stranger's character, and an acknowledgement of the possibility that something significant was beginning to take shape. The stranger rode quietly under the night sky, the stars scattered above him. He considered the day's events, the woman's strength, the subtle ways their interactions had deepened his understanding of both her and himself. He recognized the delicate balance between his mission and the emerging personal connection, understanding that both required careful attention and thoughtfulness. His mind carried the memory of her presence, the calm determination she displayed, and the quiet sense of integrity that guided her actions. As the night deepened, both the woman and the stranger held a shared sense of anticipation. They were aware that the journey had only begun, that challenges and discoveries awaited, and that the bond forming between them had the potential to grow in ways neither had fully imagined. The events of the day had laid the foundation for trust, understanding, and mutual respect, creating a quiet but profound connection that promised to shape the days to come. Morning arrived with a pale light that spread gently across the town. The streets were quiet, and the air was cool with the faint scent of earth and flowers. The woman moved through her chores with practiced hands, tending to the house and garden, yet her thoughts kept returning to the stranger. There was a mix of curiosity and concern, a sense that the days to come would bring challenges as well as opportunities to understand the man who had entered her life. So quietly, the stranger had returned early, walking through the town with careful observation. He was alert to the rhythm of the streets, noticing the movements of people and the subtle changes in the town. His purpose remained clear, yet he could not ignore the growing sense of connection with the woman. Each interaction deepened his understanding of her character, her resilience, and the quiet way she influenced the lives of those around Irby mid-morning. The debtor became more visible in the town. Rumor spread that he might resist the stranger's efforts to settle the matter. The woman and the stranger met to discuss the situation, carefully planning the next steps. Their conversation was precise, strategic, and respectful, highlighting their growing trust and ability to work together. Despite the tension, there was a shared calm, a quiet understanding that they could face the challenge without unnecessary conflict. They approached the debtor together, the stranger taking the lead, while the woman provided support and insight. The interaction was tense but controlled, revealing the stranger's firmness, tempered with fairness. The debtor responded with resistance at first, but the combined presence and calm determination of the two brought a gradual shift. The situation required careful navigation, and both the woman and the stranger relied on each other to guide the conversation toward a resolution that was just and effective throughout the day. Small moments of personal connection continued to appear. They shared quiet conversations in the marketplace and along the river, discussing the events of their lives in ways that allowed trust to deepen. The woman spoke of her hopes for the future, the sense of responsibility she carried, and the lessons she had learned from hardship. The stranger offered reflections from his travels, insights into human nature, and careful observations that revealed both wisdom and empathy. As the afternoon progressed, an unexpected challenge arose. A misunderstanding led to tension with some townspeople, creating a potential obstacle to the resolution of the debt. The stranger remained composed, assessing the situation carefully and suggesting actions that could ease the tension. The woman contributed her knowledge of the town and the people, and together they guided the situation toward a peaceful outcome. Their teamwork revealed a synergy, growing recognition of each other's strengths and abilities. During a quiet moment, they walked through the town square, observing the daily life around them. Children played near the fountain, merchants attended to their goods, and townspeople moved with calm purpose. The woman pointed out familiar landmarks, shared stories of the past, and discussed her vision for the future of the town. The stranger listened with genuine interest, offering observations that revealed his thoughtful nature and the care he took in understanding the people and the environment around him. The day wore on, and the tension with the debtor gradually eased. There was a sense of accomplishment in their collaboration, quiet satisfaction in having navigated a difficult situation together. The stranger and the woman shared a brief moment of reflection, acknowledging the effort it had taken and the lessons learned. Their bond grew stronger, built on mutual respect, understanding, and the shared experience of overcoming a challenge that required patience, courage, and careful thought as the evening approached. They found themselves near the river, the water flowing gently over smooth stones. They sat in silence for a while, observing the reflections of the sunset and the quiet movements of the town. Their conversation turned to more personal matters, sharing insights into hopes, dreams, and fears. The woman spoke of moments of doubt and resilience. The stranger shared experiences of travel and reflection. Each word carried weight, deepening the connection that had grown steadily over the past days. The townspeople began to notice the changing dynamic, the subtle but meaningful presence of the stranger in the woman's life. Some whispered, some watched with curiosity, but the pair remained focused on each other and the task at hand. Their connection was quiet yet powerful, built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. They learned to anticipate each other's needs, respond to challenges together, support one another in ways that went beyond words. By nightfall, the debtor's situation had reached a temporary resolution. The immediate challenge was managed, though there remained work to be done. The stranger returned to the woman's home to discuss the next steps, their conversation flowing naturally from practical matters to more personal reflection. They spoke of the day's events, the progress made, and the growing understanding between them. There was a quiet recognition of the bond forming, an acknowledgement of the trust and care that had emerged in the midst of challenges as the night deepened. The woman prepared for rest, her thoughts lingering on the stranger and the day's events. There was a sense of anticipation and curiosity about the future, an awareness that the connection they shared could develop in unexpected ways. The challenges they faced together had revealed strengths, vulnerabilities, and the potential for partnership that neither had fully anticipated. The stranger traveled through the darkened streets outside the town, reflecting on the day's events and the growing importance of the woman in his thoughts. He considered the delicate balance between completing his mission and nurturing the subtle connection that had begun to shape his actions and decisions. Each step of the journey carried both purpose and possibility, a recognition that the coming days would require careful attention, patience, and openness to what might emerge in the quiet moments under the stars. Both the woman and the stranger understood that their interactions had laid the foundation for trust, understanding, and a deepening bond. The challenges they had faced together had revealed character, strength, and mutual respect. The night carried the promise of continued growth, discovery, and a connection that would be tested, strengthened, and ultimately shaped by the choices they made together. The day had brought resolution, reflection, and the subtle but undeniable beginnings of a relationship that held the potential to transform both of their lives. Morning arrived with soft light spreading over the town, bringing calm and clarity to the streets and buildings. The woman moved through her morning routines with steady hands, her mind reflecting on the past days and the stranger who had entered her life. It was a quiet anticipation, a sense that the challenges they had faced and the trust they had built would come to a turning point today. Her heart held both caution and hope. Aware that the day ahead could change everything, the stranger returned early, walking through the town with a measured pace, observing the environment and the people around him. His purpose was clear, yet the growing connection with the woman had added a new layer to his thoughts. He considered the lessons learned over the past days, the trust established, and the ways in which their collaboration had grown into something more than a simple mission. There was a careful balance between duty and the emerging bond, and he intended to approach the day with both awareness and integrity. By mid-morning, the final phase of the debtor situation began to unfold. The debtor appeared more defiant, and tension in the town began to rise. People watched from windows and doorways, sensing the importance of what was about to happen. The woman and the stranger met to discuss their approach, carefully planning steps that would ensure resolution while maintaining respect and fairness. Their discussion revealed a deep understanding of each other's strengths, and they moved with quiet coordination and trust. They approached the debtor together, the stranger leading with a firm but calm presence while the woman offered support and guidance. The conversation was tense, with the debtor showing resistance. Yet the combination of their steady confidence and thoughtful negotiation began to shift the situation. Each word, gesture, and pause carried meaning, and both the woman and the stranger relied on their growing understanding of each other to manage the challenge effectively as the situation progressed. The debtor began to show signs of willingness to resolve the matter. The town watched in anticipation, the air filled with quiet tension and hope. The woman provided insight into the community's needs, offering solutions that were fair and reasonable, while the stranger applied his experience and judgment to ensure a just outcome. Together, they created an atmosphere of respect and resolution. Guiding the debtor toward a final agreement by afternoon, the matter had reached a resolution. The debtor had agreed to the terms, and the tension in the town eased. There was a collective sense of relief, and townspeople began to return to their routines. The whispers of admiration for the woman's wisdom and the stranger's skill circulated quietly. The task that had brought the stranger to the town was complete. Yet both he and the woman felt that something far more meaningful had developed during the process after the resolution. They walked through the town together, observing the lives of the people they had interacted with and reflecting on the events that had unfolded. They shared quiet conversations about the lessons learned, the importance of patience and understanding, and the moments of insight that had emerged from their collaboration. The woman spoke of her pride in the town and its people, and the stranger acknowledged the care and integrity she had shown throughout the challenges in the late afternoon. They found a quiet spot near the river, the sound of flowing water providing a gentle rhythm to their reflection. They spoke about personal matters, sharing thoughts, dreams, and hopes that had not yet been revealed. The woman expressed her desire for stability and meaningful connections, while the stranger reflected on his journey, the unexpected bond he had formed, and the ways in which the town and the woman had changed his perspective. There was a sense of openness and trust, a quiet acknowledgement of feelings that had grown steadily over time. Evening approached. The town was bathed in warm light. People moved quietly through the streets, the calm after the tension creating a serene atmosphere. The woman and the stranger shared moments of laughter and simple joy, walking side by side and observing the ordinary beauty of life around them. There was no rush, no urgency, simply the presence of each other and the comfort that had grown. From days of shared experience, trust, and understanding, the sun began to set, casting long shadows and painting the town in shades of gold and purple. They paused to watch the sky, the peaceful moment giving space for reflection and connection. The stranger spoke softly, expressing gratitude for the woman's guidance, insight, and presence. The woman acknowledged the courage, integrity, and care the stranger had shown, recognizing that their time together had created a bond beyond the original purpose of his visit. The townspeople, observing from a distance, began to understand the quiet significance of the connection that had developed. Whispers of admiration spread, some offering subtle approval, while others remained curious. The woman and the stranger remained focused on each other, aware of the depth of their bond and the importance of nurturing it with patience and care. There was a sense that the events of the past days had shifted the course of their lives in meaningful ways by nightfall. The town had settled into calm and quiet. The woman prepared for rest, her thoughts lingering on the stranger, the resolution of the debtor, and the unexpected emotions that had grown. She felt a mixture of contentment, curiosity, and hope, aware that the connection they shared had the potential to deepen further. There was a sense of possibility, a recognition that trust, care, and shared experience had created a foundation for something lasting. The stranger traveled quietly through the town, reflecting on the final events of the day. He considered the balance between completing his mission and the personal bond that had emerged. Each step carried thought and awareness, recognizing the significance of the woman in his life and the impact of their shared experiences. The quiet night, the calm streets, and the reflection of stars above provided a sense of perspective, highlighting the journey they had taken together. As the night deepened, they shared a final conversation under the stars. Words spoken softly and carefully, acknowledging the journey and the bond that had grown. There was no need for grand declarations or dramatic gestures. The connection was rooted in trust, respect, shared experiences, and the quiet understanding that had developed over time. They spoke of the future with careful hope, recognizing that their bond had the potential to shape the lives ahead in meaningful ways. When the stranger prepared to leave the town, there was a quiet moment of acknowledgement, a recognition of the journey and the relationship that had emerged. The woman watched as he departed, feeling a mixture of anticipation, hope, and calm certainty that the connection would continue to grow. The town returned to its rhythm, yet for both of them, the events had created a lasting impression, a bond that had transcended the original purpose of his visit, the story of the stranger. And the woman concluded with a sense of resolution, trust, and the promise of new beginnings. Their journey had begun with a task, evolved through challenges and shared experiences, and ended in a connection that carried both meaning and hope. They had discovered understanding, respect, and a quiet love that would continue to shape their lives and the lives of those around them. The final moments of the day were filled with calm reflection, mutual appreciation, and the awareness that what had started as a simple mission had grown into something far more profound and lasting. The morning came quietly, with soft sunlight spilling across the town and casting long shadows on the streets. The woman moved through her usual routines, tending to her home and small garden, yet her mind was full of reflection. The past days had changed everything, bringing challenges, resolutions, and the unexpected presence of the stranger who had quietly entered her life. There was a feeling of anticipation in her heart, a sense that the story between them was not yet complete, that the future held possibilities she could not yet fully imagine. The stranger returned, as he had before, walking calmly through the town and observing the daily rhythm of life. His thoughts were focused on both the town and the woman, reflecting on the events that had passed and the bond that had grown between them. He carried a sense of purpose and awareness, understanding that the connection they shared had become as important as the mission that had first brought him here. His presence was steady, respectful, and quietly attentive, drawing subtle attention from the townspeople without disrupting the calm of the morning. They met near the marketplace, the sounds of vendors and the scent of fresh bread filling the air. Their greeting was calm, natural, and filled with a growing familiarity. They spoke briefly about the town, the people, and the events of the previous days. The conversation flowed smoothly, moving from practical matters to personal reflection. The woman shared her thoughts on the progress of the town, her hopes for the future, and the lessons she had learned from the challenges they had faced together. The stranger listened attentively, offering insights and quiet encouragement, showing both understanding and admiration for her perspective. By mid-morning, they walked through the town together, observing the daily life and interacting with the townspeople. Children waved from the street and merchants nodded in recognition of the pair, aware of the subtle but significant bond that had grown. The woman pointed out familiar landmarks, shared stories of the town's history, and discussed her vision for its future. The stranger offered thoughtful reflections, drawing from his experiences on the road and his observations of human behavior. Their dialogue was natural and engaging, building a connection rooted in respect, trust, and shared curiosity. As they passed the river, the woman paused to watch the water flow gently over smooth stones. The stranger stood beside her, observing the quiet beauty of the moment. They spoke softly about the rhythm of life, the importance of patience, and the ways in which small actions could have meaningful impact. Each word carried weight, deepening their understanding of each other and revealing the subtle care and attention they had developed over the days of interaction. Unexpected event occurred as they returned to the town center. A dispute arose between two townspeople over a minor matter, drawing the attention of others and creating tension. The stranger stepped forward calmly, assessing the situation with careful observation and offering guidance that encouraged resolution. The woman assisted by providing context and insight into the individuals involved, helping to mediate the disagreement with fairness and patience. The interaction revealed their growing ability to work together, their trust in each other's judgment, and the strength of their bond in facing challenges with composure after the matter was resolved. They found a quiet bench near the town square to rest and reflect. They spoke of their experiences over the past days, sharing thoughts and feelings that had remained unspoken until this moment. The woman expressed her admiration for the stranger's calm presence, his ability to assess situations carefully, and the respect he had shown for the town and its people. The stranger acknowledged her courage, intelligence, and thoughtful approach to both challenges and everyday life. Their conversation deepened their connection, revealing vulnerabilities, strengths, and the subtle understanding that had grown between them by afternoon. They visited the outskirts of the town, where the open fields stretched wide under the clear sky. They walked slowly, speaking of dreams, hopes, and reflections on life. The woman shared stories from her past, moments of struggle, and the ways she had learned to navigate difficulties with strength and resilience. The stranger listened, offering insights without judgment and sharing reflections that revealed his own journey, his challenges, and the lessons he had learned along the way. Each exchange added depth to their bond, creating a connection rooted in empathy, understanding, and mutual respect. The townspeople observed the pair as they moved through the streets, noting the calm and purposeful manner in which they interacted. Some whispered quietly, others simply watched with curiosity, but all sensed the significance of the connection that had formed. The woman and the stranger remained focused on each other and the shared experiences that had brought them to this moment. Aware that their bond was meaningful and evolving beyond the initial reason for their meeting as evening approached, the sky turned shades of gold and purple, casting long shadows across the streets. They paused near the river to watch the sunset, the gentle sound of flowing water providing a peaceful backdrop. Their conversation became more reflective, speaking softly about what they had learned from the past days, the impact of their interactions, and the ways in which trust and understanding had grown between them. The woman felt a sense of comfort and anticipation. Aware that the connection with the stranger had become a source of strength and hope, the stranger spoke of the journey ahead, acknowledging the importance of their bond and the potential for continued growth. He expressed appreciation for the woman's presence, her guidance, and the integrity she had shown throughout their time together. The woman, in turn, recognized the qualities he brought into her life, including calm, patience, and a quiet strength that complemented her own abilities. The mutual respect and care were evident, creating a foundation for continued connection and shared experiences. By nightfall, the town was quiet and calm, the streets illuminated by soft moonlight. The woman prepared for rest, reflecting on the events of the day, the lessons learned, the growing bond with the stranger. There was a feeling of contentment, curiosity, and hope. Recognizing that their connection was meaningful and worth nurturing, the challenges they had faced together had revealed strengths, vulnerabilities, and the potential for a partnership built on trust, respect, and shared experience. The stranger moved through the town under the night sky, reflecting on the day's events and the journey they had shared. He considered the delicate balance between completing his mission and nurturing the bond that had grown between him and the woman. Each step was taken with care and awareness, acknowledging the significance of the connection and the ways in which their shared experiences had shaped their perspectives and actions. As the night deepened, they shared a quiet moment together, speaking softly and reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. There was no need for grand gestures or dramatic declarations, as the connection between them had been established through patience, trust, and shared experience. They spoke of the future with careful hope, aware that the bond they had formed had the potential to continue growing and shaping the days ahead. The story of the woman and the stranger continued with a sense of calm resolution, reflection, and anticipation. Their journey had begun with a task, evolved through challenges and shared experiences, and led to a connection rooted in trust, respect, and subtle affection. The events of the past days had transformed both of their lives, creating a foundation for ongoing understanding, care, and the quiet beginnings of a deeper bond. The night carried the promise of continued growth, discovery, and the enduring presence of each in the life of the other.